So since Batwoman wasn't on Sunday and won't be on until the 16th of February either, I thought that because we have recently just got to episode 11 in its first season, with Batwoman also having been ordered for a full series order which will bring the total episode length to that of your typical 22 episode long Arrowverse show, I thought it would be time to revisit Batwoman and give a general overview and review of the show so far. So if you haven't watched Batwoman and you're wondering if you should get started, then this mid-season review is likely for you, but even if you have been watching up until this point, we're halfway through the season now, and I think it's time to look at how this show has done so far and begin to think about where things will go in the back half. This should go without saying, but this is just my subjective opinion on the show, and whether if you love or dislike Batwoman yourself, fair enough, and more power to you, but let's understand that there's mixed opinions on this show for sure. So originally Batwoman was meant to have 13 episodes before being given that additional 9, so this makes things even more interesting for me to consider for where we're at right now, given the fact that in only a couple of episodes time the original season was supposed to end. And if that was the case now, then I would say that Batwoman season 1 did an okay job in its first season. I definitely don't think it did a great one, but by the CW standards and what the show went out to do, I think it ticked enough boxes for the network. I mean, it has been renewed for season 2 after all. So as for the gist of the show, Batwoman surrounds Kane, who has returned to a Gotham City that has been without Batman for 3 years. Now, Gotham is also under attack from an all-new villain known as Alice and her Wonderland gang, who, surprise surprise, is also Kane's long thought to be dead sister. Now, Kate ultimately suits up in Bruce's Batman suit and takes up the mantle of Gotham's protector to thwart her sister's plans, while also struggling to fight for the sister she once knew, which obviously attempts to bring that personal, strong plot for the show's main story, which is definitely the best thing the show has going for it. Alongside your typical week-to-week issue in Gotham that usually consists of the weekly villain formula, weaved in with the underlying main plot and villain from Alice, the show was piped up as well as any of its brother and sister shows to be that of your typical Arrowverse show. But as much as I've given Batwoman a chance, I feel like in its first half of season 1, it more than often misses the mark than when it has rarely hit it on the head for me, but it hasn't been without its upsides. I have had a couple of episodes where I have enjoyed it from beginning to end, and overall I've done nothing but root for Batwoman and give it a chance after chance to sell me week to week. But considering that we are at 11 episodes in now, granted that I have a more or less optimistic outlook for the season's second half due to the current storyline being at a point of where it's at its most engaging, however, it has still in retrospect probably been the least interested I've ever been in any Arrowverse show, and that's a shame personally for me, as I'm a fan of these core characters and there are good things going for the show, but it just frequently fails to deliver in enough aspects for me. But that doesn't mean it hasn't delivered before and won't again. More often than not in Batwoman, when I've come to review it week to week, I've felt like it has just been trying to find its groove more or less in every episode, trying to strive for that sweet spot, so to speak. And I do want to stress that I do acknowledge that Batwoman has occasionally found it, and more so where we're at right now in this show with episode 11 than ever before, and hopefully that momentum can be maintained. And don't get me wrong, Batwoman does have the potential to be something that can rival the other Arrowverse shows at some point down the line, but it definitely, for me at least, didn't hit the ground running. And an analogy that I can put this into is that it feels as though the show started crawling at the beginning, graduated into baby steps, and is now only walking and only just beginning to get into a jog, but far from running into its aspiration of being an all-round successful show. However, I did say that Batwoman has managed to achieve some kind of sweet spot in my eyes from time to time when watching the show, and that is because of something that I feel is its strongest aspect. Now, the cast of Batwoman in general is decent enough, I feel, for the characters they play and how they fit into the story, with the exception of a couple of characters that until recent episodes have felt fairly lacking and uninteresting, but I would say that they all pale in comparison to one character, and that I really do feel like this show would have little to nothing to offer for me if it wasn't for the fact that the big guns of Batwoman season 1 is their character of Alice, who is played by Rachel Skarsten. Rachel Skarsten's portrayal and performance of Alice is definitely the wild card of the show, and that would make sense because any villain of a season of a show should be one of its strongest parts, but I think the reason I give so much credit here is because she really is one of the few things about this show that I rate and would happily endorse. Now, as for Ruby Rose as Kate Kane, I feel like she really does look the part as Batwoman and does a decent job when there is a moment in an episode that requires the Batwoman persona to come out, because, you know, who doesn't like seeing the actual hero doing hero stuff in Gotham City, right? I mean, so those are the entertaining moments which I think would be considered the most important things. However, when it comes to any scenes that show Kate Kane that require a range of expression, she often gives off this consistent vibe in any scene that she's in, and ultimately makes me feel like her performance has often been kind of bland as a result. But I do feel like she's finding her own groove into the character as the season progresses. I mean, for me, she most shines when she's actually in the cowl, and I'm looking forward to seeing her character progress down the line. But the story between that of Kate Kane trying to reach her sister Beth, who has been locked down under a whole load of crazy in Alice due to her being kidnapped for many years, serves for an interesting story between the two, in where Alice is always creating some intriguing trouble to bring Kate down into her rabbit hole of crazy to reunite as sisters, and Kate who is just trying to purge the crazy in Alice. And most recently, because of the crossover that was Crisis on Infinite Earths, the fallout of that and how it's impacted the character of Alice has set up an even more interesting predicament as of episode 11, which gives me the spark to see what the second half of the season will be like after being fairly hit and miss for the first half. So I do want to stress that there is engaging and interesting story there, it's just spread too few and far between the season for my liking. Now, I also enjoy the son of Lucius Fox, Luke Fox, who assists Kate Kane in her new Batwoman adventures, as he was formerly helping out Bruce Wayne himself before he mysteriously disappeared from Gotham at the same time as Batman, would you guess? But it just makes me wonder if we'll see any more additions to the Batcave, but Luke Fox does what he needs to do in the show, and I don't really have any complaints here. Now, Sophie Moore is the love interest for Kate Kane, who, to be honest, until quite recently hasn't been all that interesting, and serves as that character who has that relationship with the main character that offers some drama from time to time, as well as the whole typical, you can't find out about Kate's identity being Batwoman. I mean, recently her character has been given a bit more of a push in the direction of what was teased with her own personal struggle from the get-go of the show, which I hope gives her a bit more of an interesting time ahead in the future episodes. But, she hasn't been bad in any way. I don't want that to come across with what I'm saying, but she just hasn't been anything for me to rave about either. Now, as for Jacob Kane, who is Kate's father, is also the head of the Crows, which is a security firm in Gotham City, picking up the pieces of Gotham after Batman had seemingly abandoned it. Now, I would say that Jacob is a very well acted character, and who is one of the most, or should I say more interesting characters on the show next to Alice, because of his performance and relationship to the main villain and main character of, Batwoman. But I can see him always being a fairly interesting character on the show given his position in Gotham City, and obviously his connection with his daughter that will inevitably lead to an interesting reveal one day. There are also other characters such as Mary, who runs her own kind of clinic for those who need it in Gotham, who is Kate's stepsister, but other than serving as a bystander to mostly everything that's been going on, I just haven't really been drawn to the character that much. There are other aspects of the show that aren't huge issues, but definitely pick away at my immersion at the side. One being that Gotham City itself feels empty and doesn't really even feel like Gotham. I mean, it doesn't mirror that of what I think Gotham would truly feel like, and hasn't nearly portrayed it as well as, like the Gotham TV show did visually, or even that of when Titans has rarely shown it. I mean, of course, it's not like as though Batwoman doesn't make an attempt to grasp you into their Gotham world world, but usually it makes it more sorely apparent in their efforts. For example, if there's a gathering crowd looking upon Batwoman or some incident or even some in-town event, there's just like only a small group of people who happen to be the citizens of Gotham that you can just blatantly tell are a result of all of the extras that they could just muster in at the time. Now, I'm not expecting movie budget or anything, but just trying to point out how these moments don't really make the world feel as convincing as much as they try to. And this may sound like a weird criticism for some of you, but this Gotham in Batwoman just isn't really what a Gotham, especially with the premise of a city without the Batman, would be like. And I feel like that's quite a big thing, considering Gotham is as large of a character as any other character really in the comic books. I mean, sure, with it being set in Chicago where Nolan filmed his Dark Knight trilogy, you can liken it to that of a familiar Gotham, I suppose, but given that we're seeing more of this iteration of the city than ever in a 42-minute show week to week, the more I see it, the more I feel like it isn't really the Gotham City when I should be feeling the opposite. This isn't even to mention a large pile of questions that fans have been asking since day one, such as, where is Alfred? Where are the Robins? Is Dick Grayson Nightwing in Bloodhaven? If so, wouldn't he have taken up Gotham's protector role? I mean, where is Barbara Gordon? Has she already been Oracle? Or where's Jim? Is he long gone? And out of all of Batman's rogues gallery villains to cause issues in Gotham, Alice happens to be the only one. I mean, at the end of the day, sure, you could say things are different in this version of Gotham, but there's definitely some questions that stick out like a sore thumb and are, just to be honest, even ignored because, well, I don't think they can actually properly address them due to show limitations, which is why we'll likely never see the Riddler, Mr. Freeze, Bane, Scarecrow, Firefly, Mad Hatter, and many others, but only teased and mentioned in name, which, I don't know, just kind of, even though I get that, it kind of just even adds even more, or should I say, takes away more immersion from a Gotham City that just quite simply isn't really Gotham City. Now, of course, at the same time, this show surrounds Batwoman, who is of course a lesbian, and recently in an episode even revealed herself to Gotham City in a magazine cover and interview with Supergirl, aka Kara Danvers, since Crisis on Infinite Earths all made them blend and merge into the same Earth. Now, I feel like the show has done a great job in many instances in its LGBT representation, but sometimes the way they choose to incorporate the message into their episodes at times has felt like a bit too on the nose, and the literal meaning of too on the nose being that it felt a bit too obvious or wasn't that subtle to the point of where it came across a bit too unrealistic at times. Now, these messages don't always have to be subtle, of course, and I bet being very deliberate with the way they have chosen to include this at times has been for that very reason. But yeah, I guess just a couple of times I felt like it was a bit like, huh? As for the action in the show, which has been a mixed bag for me, at times it has felt decent, but at other times there have been moments where I just thought not so much. But for the most part, Batwoman continues on what you'd expect from vigilante action in the Arrowverse, with at times certain sequences not really making any sense at all, in a way that feels like it diminishes the main character for the sake of plot, which we've seen in other Arrowverse shows such as The Flash, which has just been equally as complained about, for example, during the course of season 5 with Cicada, and plenty of things that if you know. But then other times in Batwoman showing action sequences that are just awesome to witness and only leave you wanting more. Overall though, Batwoman is, as I said, it's just okay and not so okay at the same time. I wouldn't really recommend this show much other than if you're of course quite a hardcore Arrowverse fan, then it will be likely something you've already been watching, or at least intend to. But if you're not, then I would only really recommend this if you are a big, of course, Arrowverse continuity junkie, are either a big Bat fan, but then again, that could mean this show may frustrate you as much as you intend it to be the opposite, or maybe to just watch it if you haven't really got much else on, and maybe it will pleasantly surprise you from time to time. It's definitely had its interesting moments for sure, but enough to make up for what I'd call the definition of mediocre, or even less than. not really. And here's the thing, I know this show has its fans, it really does, and if you enjoy Batwoman and don't agree with anything at all that I'm saying here, then good for you. Like, seriously, more power to you. But in my experience, Batwoman falls very short of all of the Arrowverse's show's first seasons, but it isn't without its own glinting hints of promise that have come every now and again when I've been watching. So I'm optimistic that Batwoman will continue to improve, but it just has been off to a colorless start. But other than that, everyone, I would love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts of this mid-season review of Batwoman. What do you make of the show so far, considering we're now in the mid-season? Do you agree with anything I have to say? Do you completely disagree? At the end of the day, it's all subjective, so I would just love to read all of your responses down in the comments. If you did like this video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button. It really does show your support for the channel. Other than that, you can follow me on social media. All of my links will be in the description down below to my Discord and everything else. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Seriously, I really appreciate you spending your time here today on this video. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat family, in the next video. Goodbye.